Welcome to this Pastel My Business online webinar. During this webinar, we will take you through the buying and selling process. We will show you how to process quotes, purchase orders, invoices, returns, receipts, payments, write-offs, and allocations for your customers and suppliers. Today we are dealing with buying and selling. Now, buying and selling is we're looking specifically at buying stock from our suppliers. So we look at supplier processing, including your purchases, your purchase orders, your invoices, how you pay your suppliers. And also we look at selling, which is your customers, where we look at your quotations to invoices to write-offs and so forth. So to get us started this afternoon, we're going to look at suppliers. So if I click on the supplier menu and I click on purchase order option. Now, ideally, what you would like to see here is you are looking at buying stock from your supplier, and you would put in a purchase order just to verify where they've got stock and so forth before you can proceed and finalize your payments from the supplier. So looking at purchasing a purchase order, we click on the Add Purchase Order button. Now, as you can see, the screen that's going to come up is the supplier's details and so forth. Alright, and I can see that the screen is still updating on some of your windows. Now, those that are updated already, all you need to then do to put through a purchase order, you click on Add a Supplier. So you choose a supplier. For the sake of today's session, we'll look at Adidas Sports Warehouse. So I choose that supplier. When I enter that supplier's details, it pulls through all the supplier's details, including the current balance they have, the last document that was processed. On the right hand side, if there is a reference number that has been entered for the supplier's account, it will pull through the supplier's tax reference number. If I've set up a credit limit, if I have been given a credit limit by the supplier, I will specify it. And also the date of this purchase order, discounts if applicable, physical address details and postal information and so forth. So on this screen, what we're going to do is we go to the lines of the purchase order. Now, as you can see, I'm clicking on the type at the bottom. Now, we've got two types of items that you can bring in on a purchase order. You can either choose an item, which would be a physical stock item, or you can use an account if you want to use like a general ledger account. For instance, you would use a general ledger account if you're buying stationery from a supplier. Let's say Walton's or CNA as an example. And what you'd like to see is this stationery that you're buying from CNA, it's for internal use. So it's not stock that you're going to be reselling. So it's for internal use, so you want it to directly affect your expenses account. So you can choose account here, and once you've chosen the account, then you would specify the stationery account under the description. As you can see, I will choose the necessary expense, and then it will allocate it directly into the income statement for that general ledger account that you've selected. But for the sake of today's session, we are looking at items. So I'm going to remove that line. So I make sure the type is selected on item. And for the sake of this session, I'm going to put through a couple of items. So we are ordering Adidas tracksuit from our supplier. Let's say we want 2 quantities here, and that is the price they quoted us on the phone. Let's put in another item, and let's say Nike running shoes. Funny how we are buying Nike running shoes from an Adidas supplier, but let's go ahead. We'll choose the Nike running shoes. We want 4 of these, and that is the price. Let's put in an extra line here. Let's put in gym equipment, and we just want 1 gym equipment, and our purchase order is done. Now, as you can see, all my lines are in there, and that is the total supplier invoice value for this order that I'm putting through to my suppliers. Now, the options that I have is either I can save this purchase order, I can save process a new purchase order, I can save and print, send it to a printer, or print to PDF, or I can email it, where I can email it directly to my supplier. So those are the saving options for the purchase order. And just be informed that with the purchase orders, these documents are not updating your ledger accounts, your supplier's accounts, your tax, your items at this point. For now, it's just saving the documents so that it's there on record that you've specified the item that you're ordering from the supplier. Now, I just need to bring your attention to the dates on the top. Now, this would be the date of the purchase order that you're actually submitting it. Now the delivery date, that would be the expected delivery date. In most cases, like most of our invoices and so forth, quotations and purchase orders are normally valid for 7 days. So you'd like your delivery dates to be within a 7-day turnaround time, or whatever the arrangement is with your supplier. You need to specify the delivery date at that point. And obviously on the delivery date, the stock has been delivered to your premises. At that point, then you do a supplier invoice, which will then affect your stock, suppliers, VAT, and all your stock items and so forth. And here we're happy with the purchase order. We are going to save this one. We can save an email, as I said earlier, but for the sake of this session, I'm just going to save it. As you can see, it's just saving the document. Great. Now the document has been saved. The window that comes up thereafter is it shows you a list of all your purchase orders. As you can see, I've got one purchase order in there for our supplier, and it has not been printed. As you can see, it's got a checkbox on the right hand side to specify whether it has been printed or not, so it will show in the list. Now we're happy with the purchase order. We've sent it to our supplier. Our supplier confirms they've got all the stock. They will be delivering the stock to us at a specified date. At the time that they deliver the stock, at that point we do a supplier invoice. Now to process a supplier invoice, you would click on the supplier's menu, go to the supplier invoice option. Now the supplier invoice option will bring us to a list of all the invoices that are currently outstanding. Maybe not outstanding, some of them could have been paid, but it's just a list of all your supplier invoices that have been processed on the Pastel My Business Online. Now as you can see, I've got 3 invoices there that I have previously processed in the past, so it's just part of my history. And for the sake of this session, I'm going to add a new supplier. So I click on adding a supplier invoice, and as per this previous screen, it gives me details of the supplier. I can then at this point choose my supplier, which is Adidas Sports Warehouse. As soon as I choose the supplier, it will bring me to a window that has all the details of the supplier, the balance, the credit limits, and so forth. Now the reference number here is quite interesting, because the reference number here also applies to all your other documents, including your purchase order. Basically the reference number is for your internal reference, or it could be a reference number from your supplier's end, because you may find that the supplier invoice numbers or the purchase order numbers that you are generating in your system does not correspond to the supplier's document numbers. So you may want to match up these two, so you can use a reference number in there. So on the reference number field, I can type in here the supplier's actual document invoice number that they're invoicing me. Alternatively, I can use any other reference for internal purposes. If you've got a different number in sequence, you'd like to enter the reference number there so that you can keep track of all your documents that you are processing. Now once you've got the supplier's details on the screen, below the reference it says from PO, so it's from purchase order. Now we are doing a linking at this stage. We are linking the supplier invoice to a specific purchase order. So I will choose a purchase order. Now when I choose a purchase order, it brings me to a confirmation screen. Now the confirmation screen gives me 2 options. Do I want to remove the original purchase order, or do I want to save it or keep it there as an original purchase order? The reason why we've put in this option in here is so that if you're ordering the same goods or buying the same goods from your supplier day or month after month, then you can leave the purchase order there, and each and every month you can just keep linking it to the same purchase order because it's recurring. But if you're not, if you're buying different things from the supplier, then you can choose, excuse me, to remove the purchase order. And for the sake of today's session, I would look at removing the purchase order. So I would click on yes on that confirmation screen. When I click on yes, it pulls through the list of my items. As you can see, we've got the 2 Adidas tracksuits, we've got the 4 Nike running shoes, and we've got the 1 gym equipment. Now at this stage, I can choose to change it further. Maybe I've had to return some of the goods. Maybe they were damaged on the way from the supplier to my premises, so I've not necessarily received the same quantities as I had initially put on the purchase order. So I can do a partial link at this stage. So I can still change the quantities here, As you can see, I've highlighted the quantities, so I can still change it to 1, or if it's increased, I can increase it at that point. But for your convenience, on the right-hand side, we've got the plus and the minus button. Now, the plus sign is to add an additional line. As you can see, I've clicked on the plus sign. It's added an additional line below the address tracksuit. And the minus sign is to remove the line. So if I've not received any gym equipment, I will just click on the minus button and it would remove the gym equipment from the lines. And it would recalculate the supplier invoice, and the supplier invoice would now be finalized. I'm happy with the supplier. This is the stock that I've got. And at this stage, you've got these options here at the bottom. Compared to your purchase information, for your supplier information, you can either click on save or process rather. Process a new to process a new supplier invoice. Process a print to print the supplier invoice, or process an email. The reason why we've made these different is because our purchase orders, they are there to be saved as a source document. However, the supplier invoice, these need to be processed or updated into the application. And when you're processing these, you're now telling Pastel to update certain information. So when we are happy with the supplier invoice and we click on process, any one of those process options at the bottom, firstly, the supplier's account now is being affected. So now you, in essence, owe Adidas Sports Warehouse X amount of money, which is stipulated there on the supplier invoice. Next thing that gets updated or affected is your stock. Your stock at this point is being brought into stock. Now you've got stock to sell. So when you process this invoice, it will bring in your stock accordingly. As you can see, I'm charging VAT on this invoice. VAT will now be applicable and be sent through to the VAT control account. And all these things are being affected just by simply clicking on the process button. Okay, I can add in any additional information there. Under the messages, on that message tab, I can add information saying, Mr. Adidas Sports Warehouse, I returned 1 pair of your Nike running shoes as they were defective. So whatever message that you want to send back as correspondence to your supplier, when you're sending the supplier invoice off, you can just put in a message in there. But for the sake of today's session, we'll look at just processing the supplier invoice. Great. Now I click on the process button. Pastel does its thing. It updates all the information accordingly, and it brings me to the next window. Which shows me a list of all my updated invoices. As you can see, with today's date, it is my supplier invoice, and now the supplier's account is being affected. Now we're happy with Mr. Supplier. Say for instance we had to return goods. We delivered the goods, and unfortunately we had to return them because they were not the right size that we wanted. So we go to supplier returns. We click on the supplier returns button. It will show us a list of all the supplier returns. I will add a supplier return. I will click on that button. And it brings me to exactly the same window as other supplier documents. I would then simply specify the supplier that I'm looking for, which is Mr. Adidas. I would specify a reference number if needs be. And it will say from which invoice. Now, for the sake of today's session, let's look at the most recent invoice. So we're going to look at today's invoice, which is the invoice of the 26th for that value. I would select that invoice. When I select that invoice, it will pull through all the information that was on the invoice and pull it through on the supplier returns. Now here I need to specify what am I actually returning. Okay, we were happy with the Adidas tracksuit, so we click on the minus button to remove the Adidas tracksuit lines. We are happy with the full gym equipment, so we click on the minus sign to remove that line. But with the Nike equipment, with the Nike running shoes, we returned 1 pair. So we change the quantity here to 1. When we change the quantity here to 1, you notice that all the information is now updated. So now the purchase returned, meaning that our supplier now will be debited with an amount of 513. So the supplier's balance has now been reduced by whatever's been returned back to the supplier. So we owe them less. And once we're happy with the purchase return, we click on the process options. As you can see there, quite similar as to our supplier invoice, we've got the processing options. And there we go. It shows me a list of my supplier returns. We're happy. Everything is good. Now we need to pay our supplier. So to pay our suppliers, we click on the supplier payments option. Now when we click on the supplier payments option, we've got two options here that come up on the window. Either we can add a payment or we can allocate payments. Now you would want to allocate payments if you've previously processed payments for a supplier and you've not allocated them to a specific invoice. Or you can choose to add a new payment where you can do the allocation there at that point as well. So it's convenient to just do the allocation when you're doing the payments. I'll show you now. Now on the screen that we're on, we click on Add Payments button. When I click on the Add Payments button, it will ask me again for the supplier. I will choose the supplier. It will give me the balance of the supplier, including all the outstanding invoices. It will give me the document number, reference number. Maybe here you'd like to enter a check number if you're paying the supplier by check. You'd specify an amount if you want to manually specify an amount, but Pastel actually takes care of that. And you need to specify a bank account at this point. So I'll choose a bank account, which is the business current account. I'd enter a description. Thank you for your business, or whatever the description needs to be. You specify the description of the payment if you need to. You specify the date of the payment that was made, the type of payment, we paid by check, and there's a reconcile button there. This is simply for your convenience to make you more productive and efficient in your business, so that when you do your reconciliation at the end of the month, when you do your bank reconciliation at the end of the month, you don't need to go through a whole list of transactions that have not been reconciled. You're happy with this payment, it has already gone off your bank, so maybe it was an EFT payment and the payment has been successful, so it's guaranteed to go off your bank. You can choose to reconcile that transaction, and then it reconciles it for you in the bank recon automatically. Now on the list of invoices that are outstanding for the supplier, it shows me there's an opening balance and I've got 3 supplier invoices. And we'd like to pay the very last one. And as you can see, that is an allocate button as well, just to make you more productive, more efficient in your processing. So as soon as I tick that invoice, notice that amount field is automatically populated by the amounts that is outstanding. Automatically it's done. That's just by simply ticking that option. And what we also have on the application is that Pastel can automatically allocate payments to your oldest invoices, but you would need to set this up under your customer's account. So you need to go to the supplier's account rather. So you need to go to the supplier's account, specify, there's a checkbox, a tick box, which you just need to say, allocate payments to oldest invoices. And then Pastel will automatically tick that. As soon as you go to process payments, you choose your bank, and it shows you a list of your invoices. It will automatically tick the very oldest invoice first for you, which is quite cool. It adds to your productivity. Now, we happy with the payment? We happy with the payments? We're ready to process and affect our bank account. As soon as we click on the process, the supplier's account is now being paid, so we don't owe the supplier for that specific invoice. The bank is being affected, so the money is going out of the bank. And those are the 2 accounts that have been affected. That's why we have those process options. And your payment is done. It will show you now a list of all your payments that have been processed. Now, if you want to see the allocations, you can click on the Allocate Payments buttons. When you click on the Allocate Payment button, it will show you a list of all your invoices on the left-hand side, any outstanding receipts or returns on the right-hand side. As you can see, the window that has come up now, I'm going to choose a supplier. I'll choose Adidas Sports Warehouse. Excuse me. Now I've got on this window that comes up, it's got 2 options there once I've chosen the supplier. The first one is to show outstanding only. So it will only show me invoices that are outstanding or balances that are outstanding, or I can split the amounts. I can show the split amounts there. For the sake of this session, I'm going to remove that tick. It will give me a confirmation screen. You will lose any unsafe changes. Do you want to continue? I click on yes. Then it updates the list even further. Now on the left hand side, as you can see, it says invoices, drag to the right to unallocate, and on the right hand side it's got unallocated items, which would include your supplier payments and also your returns. Now if you look on the left hand side, you'll see that there's a supplier invoice, and it will show you the total of the invoice and the amounts due. Obviously, if it's due, that means it has been paid in full. So if I click on the plus sign here, I can see that there was a return here of 513 and there was a payment of 3,807.60 cents. I can drag this to the right hand side, and as you can see now it's been unallocated, it's been moved to the right. I can also unallocate the returns. As you can see, the returns on the left hand side now. Now this is just a manual process that you would need to go through and do the allocations accordingly. Once you're happy with the allocations, you click on save and save a new to do any further allocations. And basically that takes care of our suppliers, purchase orders, invoices, returns, and payments, and also your allocations. Now to just quickly take you through the screen where you set up the option to pay your supplier from the oldest invoice first, you'd go to suppliers, you choose the supplier, you click on the edit button. When you click on the edit button of the suppliers, you've got an option on the right hand side that says auto allocates payments to oldest invoice. Just by simply ticking that option or unticking it, then Pastel will automatically allocate these transactions for you. It also helps if you are using our importing bank statements option, which we will be covering at our future sessions. So this is where you would need to set up your supplier to automatically allocate. And that, in a nutshell, takes care of your suppliers. Now we're going to quickly have a look at our suppliers, at our customers. Now the customers is quite similar. I mean, the concept is the same as we did on the suppliers, but I'm just going to take you through a couple briefly so that you can see how the customers work. And there's also some additional information I'd like to share with you as we go through the customers list. So I'll go to the customer quotes. I click on the customer quotes. As you can see, I've got one outstanding quote for one of my customers, which is John Struven. I'm going to add a new quote. Great. I add a new quote and it brings me to a quote window where I then need to specify the customer. Now for the sake of the session, I will use Grineca LTA as a customer that is buying stock from me. So I choose the customer, it will bring through their balance. As you can see, a tax reference on the right, a credit limit if I've specified a credit limit. It will give me a document number, which you can set up yourself under the company information, which we did cover previously. You can specify a reference. As I said earlier, this is an internal reference for your own referencing in terms of your document numbering, sequencing, and so forth. And on the right hand side, the date of this quotation. It is today's date and the expiry date. As I said previously, that most quotations expire after 7 days, so you can make it here expire after 7 days. So I can make it here the 2nd of November and so forth. Are you giving the supplier a discount? It will show you this customer a discount. It will show you the customer's delivery address information on the right, his postal address on the right hand side, and then we get to the lines of the quotation, specifying what this customer wants to buy from us. As you can see here as well, we can also choose an account or we can choose item. We will look at items, and Mr. Grineca LTA is buying an Adidas tracksuit from us. Let's say he's buying us 2 of these, he's buying 2 of these at that price, which will pull through from the items price list. And let's say he's also buying full gym equipment and he's buying 1 of these. We're happy with the gym equipment. There we go. Mr. Grineca LTA, customer invoice is done. We're happy. This is the quotation that he wants, and we want to confirm that this is your quotation. We do have stock. Now we can either choose to save. Now saving, as I said earlier, is just to save the source documents, make the documents available. It's not updating the customer's accounts, the tax, the stock, nothing. It's just to put the documents in there as a source document. You can save a new to process a new quote. You can save and print to send it to the printer, or you can save an email it to the customer that we're good to go, business is good, I've got all your stock. Let's proceed and make this happen. Now, most importantly, you've got a message box there. Now, you'd like to specify a message. Thank you for your business. Thank you for patronage. and you'll be informed that your quotation is only valid for 7 days, and so forth. Add a message here that you'd like your customer to see. Make them feel warm and fuzzy, and obviously thank them for their business and so forth, the validity of this quotation, and what the terms and conditions are if you want to specify that. So just make sure you enter those details on the message, and done. Your quotation is done, can be saved, printed, or emailed to the customer. For the sake of this session, we're just going to simply save it. I'm saving this quotation, and on my list of quotations, there's my new quotation for Grinica LTA, and there it is. Now 2 days later, customer confirms that Leco, we're good with the quotation, let's go ahead. When are you delivering your stock? Then I deliver the stock to him. At that point, I do a tax invoice. So I'll click on the tax invoice option. It will show me a list of all my tax invoices that have been printed. Some of them have been paid. It will show you with a tick on the right hand side of each. It will show you if it's outstanding and the total due on each one of them. Now I've got two options under customers. Either I can add a tax invoice or I can add a recurring tax invoice. We will be covering recurring tax invoices at our next session. So please go to pastel.co.za to book your session for the recurring invoices. Very powerful tool that you don't want to miss. Now we are looking at adding a tax invoice. So I click on the Add Tax Invoice button. I will choose my customer, which is Grinica LTA. Specify the details in terms of the reference numbers, and do I want to link it from a quote or recurring invoice and so forth. We are linking it to our quote. So I select a quotation. It also gives me the same window that popped up under suppliers. Do I want to leave the quotation, or do I want to remove the quotation from the system? So it removes the source document. So if this customer is going to be buying the same things from you all the time, leave the quotation. It just makes it more convenient for you. You don't need to go through and enter all the lines individually each and every month or every week and so forth. For the sake of this session, I will click on Remove the Document. Now it pulls through all the information from the quotation. It gives me the quotation number there. It pulls through that this customer ordered 2 tracksuits and 1 gym equipment. We're happy with that. And as you can see on the highlights, I can change the quantity. So if anything has changed with my agreement with the customer, I can then change the quantities here. I can change the price here as I feel necessary. I can give them a discount for whatever wear and tear and so forth. Now this is a line discount. On top here, we have a full invoice discount. So this will discount the entire value of the invoice, whereas this will discount that specific line only. So I can just choose to give them a discount on the full gym equipment because something was faulty, whatever the case was. So just be informed of that. I can add a message here as well, where I can say, thank you, Mr. Grinica LTA, for your service. On your next purchase, I will be looking at a further 5% discount on your purchase. Thank you for your business, or whatever the case is. Or you can add in your banking details in here. Most important, add in your details of your bank, your app, say FNB, whatever the bank account is. Enter the details so that the customer has got it ready and able to pay you when necessary. And as you can see here, the options are different for our quotations. We've got process. Process meaning it is an update screen where it will affect our financial information. So when we click on this process button, the stock will be affected. So I will have 2 less Adidas tracksuits. I have 1 less gym equipment from my stock control. My customer's account will be affected. This customer will now owe me this amount of money. My tax is also being affected. So my tax will be affected accordingly into my tax control account. So I can click on process and new to do another tax invoice, process and print to send it to a printer, or process an email to email it off to a customer. But for the sake of today's session, I will just click on the process button. When I click on the process button, there we go. My invoices are there. There's my invoice for Grinica LTA. He owes me X amount of money as of the specific date. Now we're happy with the customer invoice that we've sent out to a customer, and the customer owes us X amount of money. At a later stage, customer wants to return some goods for whatever reason. We'd need to do a customer returns. We click on the customer returns option, and on the customer returns option, it will show me a list of all my previous customer returns, so I can just keep track as to what sort of stock are my customers returning. Is there a trend? Should I really look into my suppliers and see if there's an issue or whatnot? And we'll add a new customer return. So I'll click on the Add Customer Return button. I would specify my customer, and we are linking it. Apologize for the delay. And we are linking it to that invoice. So I would choose that invoice, and it pulls through the details. Now, as I did previously on the suppliers, I would click on the minus button to remove the line that I don't need. And here, let's say it is gym equipment, and we want to change the quantity. So we can change the quantity here, whatever it is. And once we're happy with the quantity of whatever is being returned, we can click on Process, Process New, Process Print, or Email to the customer. As you can see, the information is quite pervasive throughout the application, which is quite cool and also constant. You don't see different terminologies for different things meaning the same thing. And under customers, we're happy with the customer return. Now we receive money, so we do a customer receipt. We receive money from the customer. Customer has paid us by EFT, by a check. They've come in, they've given us cash, whatever the case was. We do a customer return. Now, as per the suppliers, you can add a receipt or you can do the allocations. We're not going to go into detail of the allocations as we covered it in detail under the suppliers. I'm going to add a receipt here. I will then choose the customer, Greenacre LTA. Okay, once I've chosen Greenacre LTA, the customer, I would then put in the details of what I require in terms of how my payment, how am I receiving this cash, which bank account is it affecting, is it coming through the business bank, is it coming through petty cash, if it was cash at the business premises and so forth. I'll specify the bank account, give it a reference number, details of the reference, give it a description if there needs to be any details of what sort of payment was received, though I've got a payment type here. So I can choose it as EFT, credit card, check, or cash. EFT, I can also choose to reconcile at this point. Date the receipt as to when you received it, and by simply ticking on the invoice, Pastel automatically allocates the amount in the bank that needs to be taken off, which is very, very cool. So by simply doing this, it does the payments for you, it does the receipts for you, and it also does the allocation of the matching for you, so that you don't need to go through the manual process and having to drag and drop from unallocated to allocated and so forth. We're happy with the receipt, we click on Process to update, Process New, and so forth. Now what happens at this stage is that the bank account, money is going into the bank account, which is great. So the bank account, as soon as I click on the Process button, the bank account is being affected. The customer's account is being paid, so the customer's account is being credited. Our sales account in our profit and loss report, that is also being affected, because this is at this point, actually the sale is being affected at the point of the invoice. It's not being affected at the time that you receive the funds from your customer. So at the time that you do a customer invoice, that's when your sales account becomes affected, at your cost of sales and so forth. But we will be looking at financial reports in our future sessions, so keep an eye out on those. So here at the receipts option, the only things that we are affecting is just the bank and the customers. Those are the only two things that are being affected. And if we're giving the customer a discount, we specify the discount amount in here. Maybe they paid in early way in advance of their payment due date. We'd specify a discount and we want to give them a cash discount. We'd specify a discount, and here your discount account will now be affected. And then I click on Process, and it's done. The payment has now been received, the customer's account has been affected, the bank has been affected. If there is discount is also being affected. Now we're happy with the customer, and also under the allocations, that's where you do the exact same allocations as we did for your suppliers. Now we're happy with the customer. Say for instance, we have to write off the customer. Unfortunately, Mr. Greenacre LTA has gone AWOL, disappeared from the face of the earth, and we unfortunately need to write him off. Now we click on the customer write-offs option, which brings us to the window that is on the screen right now. We click on Add a Write-off. When we click on Add a Write-off, we choose the specific customer that we want to write off. When we choose the customer that we want to write off at this point, Pastel will then update all the missing information or the missing invoices that are still outstanding or still have not been paid by this customer. It's just a bit slow, it's busy pulling through the information. Apologies for the delay. Let's select it again. Okay, Mr. Grunica LTA is not pulling through anything. Let's have a look at what we have under one of our other customers. Let's look at John Struben. There we go. If I was writing off this customer, John Struben, it will show me a list of all the invoices that are currently outstanding. So I can choose to tick all of these as these are all being written off. Or I can write off a specific value. I'm writing off a specific invoice for whatever agreement or arrangement that you have with your customer. But if it's a write-off, then that means the customer has gone AWOL. You're not going to be receiving this money from the customer anymore. Now you need to specify a description as to details of why this write-off is being done. So customer has been absent without notification. Client has merged business with another client of yours. So refer to customer A, B, and C or whatever. Just specify details, which is good business practice to keep track of why everything gets done. So use those description fields as much detail as possible. Then you click on the save or the process rather, either process or processing new to add a new write-off. For the sake of this session, I will just click on the process to write off this account. Now when I'm writing off this account, the write-off expense account is being affected in your financial reports and the customer's account is nulled. So it's zeroed out. So this customer wouldn't owe me anything anymore, unfortunately. And that in a nutshell takes care of customer processing. Now, at the end of the month, we need to send out statements. So we need to do a statement run. So to do a statement run, we click on Customer Statements Run option. When we click on the Customer Statement Run, it brings us to a very cool window where we need to specify the filters. Which customers are we selecting? Are we looking at our active or inactive customers? Are we looking for a specific category of customers? What date ranges are we looking at? Do you want to include opening balances? Do you want to show details? You're going to show the customer's details or the item details. And then the distribution. Do you want to print all the statements? Do you want to print an email? Print or just email only? And if you are emailing, you need to specify a subject, statements for the month of October 2010, and write in a message, good day customer, thank you for your business, please find statements attached. Please be informed that our banking details are as forth and so forth. So you just specify details of what you want the email to read. Now, once you've entered all the filters for all your customer statements run, we click on Submit. When you click on the Submit button, it will tell you that the statement run has been completed, and it will give you an update as to how many customers have been affected in terms of the printing and the ones being emailed. And as you can see on my side, I didn't have specific customer invoices to be printed or emailed at that point. So you click on the Finish button, your statement run is done, all your statements are now sent or printed to or sent to the printer. And then you can send those via post, and at least you've sent the correspondence out to your customers. Now, another option that we have under customers is we also have an option to allocate invoices to the oldest invoice. So you can choose that option under customers as well. Just like how we did on the suppliers, you can also choose under customers. And to do this, you need to go to customers, go to a customer's account. You'd edit one of the customers, as I'm selecting one right now. Now, if you look on the right-hand side, we've got automatic allocate receipts from oldest invoice, which means that when you're processing, it will automatically do the allocation for you. And also, Pastel is also in line with your SARS requirements, which means the documents need to be encrypted, and the customer needs to send you written consent that you are going to be sending them email documents in terms of their invoices, customer return documents, and so forth. So all these documents, all these PDF documents, that will be emailed to the client are meeting SARS requirements. And the process there would be to send out an email or a letter to a list of all your customers telling them that going forward they will be receiving all their invoices or their documents via email in PDF. Do they give you consent to proceed? They send you a letter back or an email back giving you the written confirmation. Then all you need to do is come tick on this option here to accept electronic invoices. And that means that this customer has accepted it and you've got the proof on your side, and you just need to make sure that you keep your filing up to date with regards to that. In the event you need to produce that proof that the customer did consent to such information being emailed through to them. And then next time you're emailing your documents to the customer, it will encrypt them so that it cannot be edited, and it will be computer generated, and you'll have all that information ready for you. So it meets SARS requirements, and it's very important that you meet up with that. Now, once you're happy, you've made all your changes, and you've also allocated receipts to all these invoices. Now you just save all your changes or go to save a new to add a new customer. And in a nutshell, that takes care of our buying and that takes care of our selling.
Thank you for joining us for this My Business Online webinar. If you found it useful, please visit the Pastel website to find out about future My Business Online webinars or training courses. Alternatively, contact us on sales@pastelmybusiness.co.za.